Welcome to the Film Trooper podcast with your host, Scott McMahon.
Hi, and welcome to the Film Trooper podcast, Filmmaking Freedom for the Independent. This is a podcast where we focus on making and selling your film for online self-distribution. A perfect way to get started is to pick up the book, How to Make and Sell Your Film Online and Survive the Hollywood Implosion while doing it. It's available as a paperback, in Kindle ebook, as well as an audiobook. In fact, you can get the audiobook for free when you go to survivetheimplosion.com. When you go to that link, you can sign up with Audible for their free trial and get the book for free. Again, that's at survivetheimplosion.com. Okay, today's episode is a rebroadcast of my interview with Scott Kirkpatrick, the author of the book Writing for the Green Light: How to Make Your Script the One Hollywood Notices. This interview took place right before his book was published on Amazon. So in this interview, you'll hear us reference it, but in reality, it's been on the market for some time now. Also, you'll hear us talk about Mar Vista Entertainment, which Scott was a former executive at, but has since moved on to become the senior vice president of DRG, which is an international buyer and seller of movies. The title for this episode is The 6 Goldmine Genres of Indie Hollywood, What They Need and How You Can Help Give It to Them. So even though Kirkpatrick has written a book for writers, screenwriters, his perspective comes from someone who has worked and is working in what he calls indie Hollywood as like a executive, as a distributor, as a film sales representative. So what is the difference between indie Hollywood and the independent film world? Well, you have 6 major studios, maybe 7 if you include Lionsgate. But there's also the film festival circuit in which every independent filmmaker is trying to get their film picked up by one of these distribution companies. And these distribution companies work in the world of indie Hollywood, basically anything outside of the 6 major studios. And many times the world of the film festivals and indie Hollywood aren't on the same page. And you can learn more about this topic in my previous episode, Don't Take Your Film to a Festival, and that's episode number 120. Anyway, you'll hear us get into the nitty-gritty of what a day in the life is like for a film sales rep who operates in this world of the film markets and indie Hollywood. And all of this is to help the uber independent filmmaker, someone like yourself, better understand the world that we're playing in. If we're not writing or making a film that work in these film markets, then you may need to look at other business models to see how best to bring your work to the market. So before we jump back into the rebroadcast of my interview with Scott Kirkpatrick, I want to give you the list of the 6 goldmine genres according to Scott. So drum roll. They are, here's the 6. They are the family Christmas dog adventure. So any film that takes place around Christmas time with a dog, that's the central character. There's also the family safe tween romance. So usually centering around a young tween girl and, like I say, a very G-rated romance, something you would see on the Disney Channel. And then the woman in peril. This is the subgenre of the thriller. This would be something you might see on like the Lifetime Network or something like that. But they're very needed, apparently, across the world. So a woman in peril genre. Then there's the creature feature, the monster movie. There's also the aging name actor comeback action film. So somebody that had some cachet in the past, if you can bring them back in some form or another that wasn't like some past action films, these films still sell. And then lastly is the young boys action adventure film. Again, this is something you might find being picked up by the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon or something along those lines. So now that you have the information, you can see how these genres play into the world of indie Hollywood. So please enjoy the rebroadcast of my interview with Scott Kirkpatrick here on the Film Trooper podcast. So cool. Hey, everyone. I'm here with Scott Kirkpatrick, and I'm guessing Kirkpatrick is a Irish name. Is that correct?
Close. It's actually a Scottish name.
Scottish, okay.
Yeah, not to get too detailed, but my full name, Scott Kirkpatrick, apparently is the address of my lineage in Scotland, in the town of Kirk, St. Patrick, the Church of St. Patrick, in the country of Scotland. So.
Get out. Oh, crazy. Well, since my last name is McMahon, my dad's side is the Irish heritage of the McMahons, one of the many Micks,
Exactly. So the bottom line is we're both drinkers, so it's all good.
Very cool. And then, we got our celebration coming up this weekend, I guess, the 17th with St. Patrick's Day. But very cool. So you work at Mar Vista Entertainment. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there? And then we can kind of lead into what brought you to write this book, Writing for the Greenlight, How to Make Your Script the One Hollywood Notices.
Yeah, so Mar Vista Entertainment is a international film and television distribution company. I am the executive director of distribution there. I started off on the international side, basically taking American movies and TV shows and selling those to foreign countries. And I've since, over the past 2 years, moved into North America. So I'm now representing all the television rights, DVD rights, and building up their entire digital distribution division. The company produces, on average, 20 to 25 films a year. We do co-productions with Disney, co-productions with Nickelodeon. A lot of the movies you'll see on the Lifetime channel, Hallmark, Up Entertainment, Ion, those are movies we produce.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. You know, looking at the catalog, I love the fact that there's a strong like family entertainment slant. Not that you have a lot of other genres as well, but it seems like you've been able to double down on that niche. And we had talked earlier about, you know, new filmmakers coming up. You have a lot of young people that are that want to be filmmakers, but they definitely have the aspirations to do some like more serious affair in their perspective, or like they want to be like the next Tarantino of some sort. And a lot of times, a lot of independents don't look at the family genre as a genre to go into. Like it's never talked about like in the blogosphere or the press. It's always like the independent film world is always about the latest, edgiest, you know, cutting edge sort of film or genre or storyline. But it's very rare that you know see the press talking about this particular independent film that came out that features a dog and a horse and a girl, you know, or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But
and it's go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was going to say, what is your perspective of that, and what have you seen working with Mar Vista? Because you know, you have a newborn, and my daughter's 13 years old, and I've grown up watching a lot of family entertainment and thinking to myself, you know, watching my daughter respond to films and television shows that I know that the critics seem to pan, or the blogosphere would just like turn their nose up to. Not that they think it's bad, but they just don't get it. They're not seeing it from the perspective of who the audience is, which these kids just eat it up and they laugh and they're moved by it and they're transformed by it and they remember it as part of their childhood. But anyway, I just was curious what your perspective is working at Mar Vista from that perspective.
Well, and not even just Mar Vista. I mean, Mar Vista is just one of a couple of distribution companies that I've worked for. I mean, I've been doing film and television distribution for well over a decade. Within all of that, I mean, it's most screenwriting books, most of the titles talked about in the blogosphere, as you say, I mean, they want to hit those like heavy-hitting dramas and everything else. But if you really step back and look at the entire film and television industry as a whole, by and far, if you really want to have a real, you know, way to kind of open the door and get your foot in there, focus on the 80% of the industry that no one else is really tackling, and that's kids and family, that's action films, that's women-driven thrillers. Those are movies aimed for tween-age girls, as you mentioned, your daughter. You know, there's tons of movies out there. When people think of independent Hollywood, everything outside of the studio space, people instantly think Sundance Film Festival, they think Weinstein Company, and that's true. But there's a huge cross-section of Hollywood, and it's the world that I work in. When we're catering to all those TV movies, when we're catering to all those straight-to-digital films and television programs, there's tons of it. And if somebody who's young, who's passionate, or somebody who's maybe just shifting gears and wants to give screenwriting a crack wherever they are in their life, you can go try to tackle the studios, and I wish you the best of luck. But if you really want to have a true opportunity, talk to people and get your foot in the door and have a real opportunity to showcase what you can bring to the table, go for indie Hollywood. And the thing is that those movies offer writers just as many challenges as anything else, and most just don't write for it.
Yeah, definitely. So in your book, you kind of mentioned like the premise is sort of like unveiling what really goes on in terms of the perspective, like a distribution company, production company, of what they would really benefit from screenwriters. And so a screenwriter knowing sort of the back end, what to expect, they can, craft their skill or use their talents to craft stories and scripts that give them a best chance of, getting picked up and getting work published, getting it made, which is a huge accomplishment. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more about maybe some of the highlights? Because I have to make everybody understand, like the book comes out tomorrow, so it's not even available yet. So I'll make sure to put the links up, but it'll be up on Amazon, and the book comes out tomorrow. So I haven't had a chance to get my copy yet. So when I do, I can read through it more. But if you can give us a little highlights about that perspective, or just kind of maybe breaking down some of those barriers.
Yeah, sure. I do go into depth talking about the business end of how Hollywood works, how distribution works, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the real thing to pull away from the book is that it is one of the few resources out there that really gives screenwriters an actual game plan, like a real-world strategy of how to cross this huge bridge that no other screenwriting books really seem to offer any insight on. Most screenwriting books out there, cause let's backtrack a little bit. When I was younger, I wanted to be a writer-director. I was really enthusiastic about production. I started off in production before I ever got to the business side, so I completely understand the passion novice writers have for their craft and really respect it as a true art form. I shifted into the business end of things just because I found as much creativity putting deals together as writers do finishing their scripts. But when I was kind of at that phase in my life where I was writing and I was, submitting scripts to agents and doing all of that, I got nowhere and I could never figure out why. And I would read every screenwriting book that existed. I would read every filmmaking book that existed. And they all seemed to kind of say the same thing. So-and-so had a great idea. They wrote a script. Then their agent got it to XYZ person, and all of a sudden their movie got produced. And it's like they never really filled in the gaps about how that all really happened.
Yeah.
How they got from point A to point B, and how it was that like the money suddenly came around to make this multi-million-dollar film and all this other stuff. And it's like when I got into distribution, and the first time I ever went to the Cannes Film Festival or any of these huge markets, it was like the biggest eye-opening revelation of my life, and I realized how incredibly simple it actually is, but no books ever talk about it. And so that was my real passion for writing this. It was like just meeting so many screenwriters who are so talented, but because they're just writing kind of the wrong thing, and they're talking about it just not exactly in the right way, they're going nowhere. And so the book is really just one of the few resources that I think really exists. It's just like, look, do this, and this, and your opportunities are going to completely start opening up for you. It's like the title is like really dead on. So how do you get your work noticed? There's so many scripts out there. And my answer is just, write these couple of genres, focus on this style, and then discuss your script in this manner and approach people like this. And it's going to be a complete game changer for you.
Very cool. Is there any one specific tip you could give, just to give like a freebie, like you're some kind of drug dealer, like I'll give you a freebie and then you can check out the book later. I think you kind of mentioned not necessarily going to an agent first. Like there's better ways to be more productive about maybe approaching like a production company. Is there anything like specific like that you can elaborate on?
On that point, I can certainly talk about that. Most screenwriting books out there, the last chapter is like, okay, you finished your script, great. Go get an agent now. And my real world opinion is that's actually bad advice. You don't need an agent when you're starting off. Actually, an agent can be kind of detrimental to you. I go into a lot of the details as to why in the book, but the thing is that, if you actually have the capability of, discussing your project directly with production companies, you can hop on LinkedIn or any number of other sources these days and get a direct access to some of these people. The truth is they are looking for writers. They are looking for talented people to work with. So there is something to work out there. There is a deal to be made if you're coming to them with the right types of scripts. In the book, I call them 6 gold line genres, and these are like the genres that no matter what's going on in the world, no matter how bad an economic crisis is, no matter what trends are going on in Hollywood on any given day, these 6 genres are like always in demand. If you go to somebody with these and you go to them solo, not through an agent, they will listen to you. They will pay attention to you. And when it comes to representation or anything like that, the truth is, if you can, open a menu at a restaurant and order your food, you can read a contract. And if you can ask for mayo on the side or anything like that, you can negotiate. It's not knowing the little points to talk about. It's not knowing the little things to mention and say, like, I deserve this. I want to work it more like that. And if a writer's uncomfortable with it, that's fine. They can hire a lawyer. And a lawyer is going to be very dedicated to them because it's a one-on-one relationship. It's a one-on-one client. Whereas when you're dealing with an agent and you're a newbie, you haven't sold anything before, touting that you have an agent and that you're represented doesn't mean you're going to get work, because they're too busy focused on the writers that are already getting work.
Right.
So you'll still have to hustle and everything else all on your own. So I talk about how to hustle. I talk about how to get better at pitching your title, being more comfortable, discussing your work, etc.
How many, in your experience, how often does somebody come with a finished product to you that you guys acquire or you license, as opposed to, like, I know you mentioned sometimes you guys get a chance to get at the script stage where you do a co-production or whatnot. Like, I don't know what the percentage is, like, from something that starts with a script, the production side, or, starting from scratch versus somebody showing up with a finished product. Is there a percentage of the type of projects that you guys see on a yearly basis like that?
It always comes differently. And in truth, a lot of the movies that we produce, we sort of, and it's not just Mar Vista. I mean, it's every company that I know of that I've ever been a part of, or other production companies that I'm just aware of that I have friends at. I mean, in truth, most of the movies do not follow that line of logic of, let's first write a great script, and then let's put some money together, and then let's cast it. It usually works the opposite direction. You usually find out, okay, what TV channel, what production company is interested in producing a movie, and then they start looking for certain types of content, and they team up with production companies or distribution companies who make that kind of content, and then they work together and broker a deal and figure out some of the finances and figure out what types of cast members they would need. And then they usually kind of reverse engineer it and build a story out of that. So a lot of the writers that we're looking for, and it's not just Mar Vista. These are conversations that happen in conference rooms all over LA and New York all the time. The movie kind of gets put together, and then we go hire the writers we want. And that's why the concept of the book is really writing scripts that follow these niche genres, because they get you noticed, and you get seen as potentially being one of those writers that could be, hey, I'm in a jam and I need a script in 3 weeks. Can you do it? Versus you polish off your script and make it perfect, and it goes and it sits in a closet someplace. Maybe a damn good script, but it's like, okay, that's a great script, but we don't produce that kind of movie, and it's not going to move the needle for us right now. We'll consider it later. Well, then when the clock's ticking and, an executive needs to hire a writer real fast to get a movie in motion, they're not going to go sift through all those scripts to find the perfect one. They're going to go and find that writer they already know can deliver. Yeah,
that's actually interesting, because that's a good thing you brought up. Is the dream is to write something, create something in your own little office space, and then sell it, and then, like you said, and everybody rallies around to make your film. As opposed to, you're right, when attending like American Film Market, or if you go to the Cannes Film Market, the same group of people travel from the American Film Market to the Cannes Film Market. And what are the other film markets that essentially the same group of people are travel to each show? Is it Berlin is also another market, and Singapore?
Berlin is one. Toronto is one. Toronto International Film Festival. Yes, there's a huge market in Singapore called ATF, Asian Television Forum. There's Hong Kong Film Art that takes place in March. I mean, look, we can go month by month. So January, there's NACI in Miami. There's Sundance. In February, there's Berlin. In March, there's Hong Kong Film Art. In April, there's MIT TV in Cannes, France. In May, there's the Cannes Film Festival. The summer, there's really not much going on, and then it all kind of rallies around September with Toronto. October, there's a market called MIPCOM in Cannes again. November is AFM, and December is ATF. There's a lot of little markets in there too, and I've been to most of them. And I love the summertime because it's one of the few times of the year where I don't have to travel all that much. But I used to go to Cannes 3 times a year. People only think of Cannes as the big film festival, but in truth,
Right.
The TV markets, I did a lot more business with the TV markets than the film festival.
Interesting. So when you kind of to help demystify or dispel like this belief of, again, like a lot of the filmmakers and people listening, they're coming from that part of the dream of everything that we're sold to, the American Idol syndrome or the Voice syndrome, where you have talent, you display it, you share it, and you get picked up, and it's like you're swept up in this ultimate ride where your whole dreams come true. And like you said, going to the market, you're reverse engineering it because you're saying, okay, here's what the market is asking for, meaning like just cut to the chase and going, okay, so this foreign territory is looking for these types of material. And then you're saying like, okay, well, I know a production company that really specializes in, movies with horses and girls or whatever it might be, so it's like, let's go talk to them and then, or broker a deal, or how does that necessarily work out in terms of, like you say, reverse engineering it? I don't know, kind of take us through like a day in the life, very, very as succinct as possible so we can kind of get the idea of like, oh, I see. So if we were a writer or a filmmaker, or that had working relationships with some production companies that focused on these specific type of genre of films, and even though they, we had like a short film or had a script that they liked, and we just make sure we keep those relationships intact, there might be an opportunity where a distribution source, a market, whoever or whatever territory needs something, that we could fill that need. It's like you said, it's simple. I guess I'm assuming it's like a work order, whatever. Brazil needs this much. This is the work order for these film content. Can we fulfill these orders? This is me kind of trying to use my common sense to put it all together. But if you can kind of maybe dispel some of the myth that goes around for the distribution side of things.
Sure. First off, that's a humongous question, but I'll break it apart best I can.
Thanks.
So, first off, I do not want to discourage anyone who's a writer and who thinks that what I'm saying is depressing in any way or is contrary to how passionate they are about writing. If they weren't passionate about, writing a script is really hard to do. It's a huge challenge. It can take months, if not years, to complete one script, and it's daunting. So my view with all of this, and the reason I'm putting all this information out there, is if you're going to put that much effort into a script, I want to see you make some money off it, and I want to see your career start moving forward. I don't want it just to be sitting and collecting dust, and you look at it and go, well, I wrote that, and I'm very proud of it. I want you to gain something from it. So a typical situation on kind of the scale that I'm in, which is a, indie distribution company scenario, or we call them pre-sell theatrical all rights type movie scenarios. So these will be movies that are sometimes up to $10 million, sometimes a little bit more, but usually a lot less. If they have an idea, if they have a couple of outlets, or if they have a style of movie they really, really like, they're not going to just run out there and throw all their money at it. They're going to make very calculated, smart, risky investments towards which projects they're going to invest in. And if I'm a distributor, I have limited cash flow. I have a staff to pay. I have office lease to rent and all of that. So if I'm going to go invest in a movie, I'm not going to go to my bank account and just start pulling money out and pay for it. I'm going to partner with people. We're all going to kind of chip in together. And so what I would do is, if I'm going to go sell all rights to a movie, I would go to one of these film markets, like Cannes, like Berlin, whatever, and I have a series of meetings that I have every single day. And these are all set up in the 45 days before the market, but every half hour I'll have a meeting, and at 9 a.m. my client might be so-and-so from Germany, the biggest all-rights buyer from Germany. My 9:30 might be so-and-so, the biggest all-rights buyer in Japan. 10 and 11, and, all through the days, ranging from Turkey, Australia, and wherever. They're coming because they want to buy movies and have first access to movies for their country. And I'm going because I have a slate of movies that I think could potentially be big sellers. None of them exist yet, by the way. These are just like kind of theoretical movies that are semi-in motion.
Right.
And so my objective is to go to this market and broker a deal with that client in Germany, with that client in Japan, and they're going to put up a certain percentage of the budget. Their percentage of the budget depends on what country they're from, the population, the value of the currency, and everything else. This is all business jargon, I understand, but that's kind of how it works. So that way, when I'm a distributor and I come back home from the market, I have basically a stack of signed contracts that I can then go to a bank with and say, hey, will you now loan me the full budget of the movie so that I can go make it? And I have guaranteed contracts here of people who will reimburse me so I can reimburse you. And that's how movies get funded. So in that process, every single client kind of has their little push and their little say about what should be in the movie and what shouldn't. And then it's our job to basically deliver the movie that's going to make everybody as happy as possible. That's kind of a very big picture way of it. It's never that smooth and easy, but that's kind of the thing. Now, in the first chapter of my book, it's called The Crazy Little Thing Called Hollywood Logic, and I walk through a hypothetical scenario of a made-up movie, but it kind of started as a germ of an idea that really happened. And it was literally sitting in an office with my then boss. This was several years ago. And we're flipping through, getting ready for one of the markets, and we're flipping through, and he's like, oh, you know what? We haven't sold this type of movie in a long time, and you're meeting with this buyer. Let's make up a movie and tell them it's going to be ready. And then I had to go to the graphic designer. We made up a poster. I took that to the market, and I pitched it around, and we actually came back with enough money to fund that movie. And this goes against the other comment you made too, which is which genres sell and which ones don't. We had another movie. We had other movies that we were selling. Some of them were like dramas and comedies, and they had big cast names like already kind of attached to them. But it was these other genres that would sell like hotcakes. And that's kind of when I realized that, these are the genres to focus on if you really want to get ahead. So I have no idea if that answered your question.
No, it's fantastic, actually. I was wondering, do you mention the specific genres in the book, or can you give us a little tidbit right now of what genres that you, or does it change every year which genre is hot or which can sell easier?
No, that's sort of the whole concept of the book, by the way.
Okay.
Not only are you making a game plan and a strategy, but the thing is, my whole view is, technology and trends, they change all the time. The principles, they stay the same forever. So the idea of the book is follow the principles of Hollywood, follow the principles of the indie side of Hollywood, and you will get noticed. So the genres that I'm talking about are, family films that you're talking about. They're, specifically, I call them Christmas dog adventure films. Something as silly as that, where it's like people never really understand the value of a Christmas movie. It's a holiday that comes around every year, and almost 2 full months are dedicated to it. That I have people from all over the world asking me about Christmas movies, what Christmas movies are coming up, when they're going to be around. Trust me, if you add a dog on the cover, make it very family safe. It's a relatively easy formula to follow. Those things move like hotcakes. So there's that, but it also kind of focuses more on, as I said, the women in peril thrillers. And for anyone out there who thinks that, the types of scripts that I'm talking about they're too formulaic and they're kind of insulting to somebody who really values the craft of screenwriting, there's a lot of opportunity in the genre of a women in peril thriller. There's a lot of opportunity in a tween romance, a young girl's tween romance. Like, especially if you're a male writer, if you want to talk about showcasing how talented you are, if you can authentically nail a female character going through the complexities of being 13, 14 years old, you're going to get some eyeballs on your work.
Who is it different countries, like, or is it just sort of universally people, territories, they just respond better to, like, oh great, you do have a Christmas movie with a dog in it, it's perfect, or you have like why is it something about the women in peril? Is it psychologically something there, or the sales, or have you been able to I can't even pronounce an English word here. Basically, have you been able to figure out like why those particular setup or the genres, those specific ways those genres are told, that just seem to sell better? I don't know. I'm just curious, like what's in the psychological waters of the different countries, the markets that you get a chance to talk to, and how they respond to it. Because obviously, I'm not a consumer in Brazil or South Africa or something like that, so I don't know what sort of the temperament is for filmed entertainment and what responds to them, or like, I guess it looks like universal. It's more of like a carnal response to things.
Correct. When you're talking global, first off, any distribution company, the company I work for, others, all the ones I've worked for in the past, we get a certain chunk of our money from the U.S. And then we get the rest internationally, and Canada's included in that international circle. And the films that are interesting in Canada are different than the films that are interesting here. The holidays that are celebrated in the Middle East are different than the holidays celebrated in Southeast Asia. Remember, like, I have a really tough time selling Christmas movies in Australia because they're in the Southern Hemisphere and it's boiling hot. It's December. So I can't, if I'm selling a Christmas movie or a holiday-themed movie, they prefer the one, unless it has big cast in it, that doesn't have a lot of snow. And I want to really push this point for any writer out there listening to this, is that don't try to write a movie for the international market. Write a movie that's very true to life. Write a movie that's very true to your experiences. Write a movie that's very universally understood. And a universal understanding is something we all feel and we connect to. But if you try to jump in and assume you understand what the Germans are really after or what the Japanese are really after, you'll fail. And I don't mean it to sound harsh in any way. It's just that, like, no one can really predict it, and they're always changing their minds because trends change. But a universal theme is a principle to follow. So when you're talking women in peril thrillers, why? For the most part, women make most of the choices about what is being watched at any given time in any given household, whether they are buying content for their kids, whether they're buying content for themselves or themselves and their spouse or whomever. So that's a really, really strong target demographic. Why tween girls and not tween boys? Frankly, tween girls are kind of out there. They're much more curious about what their peers are up to and what they're supposed to be doing at a certain age. Younger boys at that same age are much happier trying to get access to an R-rated action film. And I'm not talking specifically to us on this podcast who have an affinity for art films, foreign films, and things like that, because I love them. And one of the great things about going to Cannes and all is I get access to this wonderful foreign content that I'll never see again. So don't be fooled by my business disguise. I'm a film lover at heart.
Yeah.
But on the global scale of things, universal themes are it. And I definitely push writers to avoid heavy dramas and comedies. These things just don't translate well. A verbal joke, if you want to write smart, witty humor, is very tough to translate, and it doesn't come across well in a foreign country. And raunchy comedies that are really successful here in the U.S. don't do well overseas. So it's just, that's a harder genre to write. And drama is just, unless it has huge cast, most of my clients aren't interested. And if most of my clients aren't interested, they don't get funded.
Yeah. It's actually funny because when I was AFM, I was pushing my independent American comedy, that I was told as well, like, hey, you know what? the number one, comedy star in the world at that particular time was Rowan Atkinson of Mr. Bean and Johnny English, because he doesn't say anything. All his comedy was physical, and it was also family friendly. So he had two things going for him: family friendly plus physical comedy translated to almost any country, and that was a big eye opener of like, oh, that makes sense. As well as you were mentioning, these various proven genres that they don't have to be formulaic. It's interesting because if any company went out, announce like, oh, we're a distribution company and we have these genres or this setup for a story, but we need writers to write something, that I guarantee you, like all those art, writers that had like their passion project or art project be like, oh, there's a job? Okay, sure. What are the limitations? Okay, I've got one girl. She's in a lighthouse. Okay, go.
Yeah.
It's like, so people will just get to work and like, okay, well, what kind of creative story can I create in these parameters? And that's sort of, I'm assuming, sort of the world you guys work in, which is like, okay, we got a buyer. We sold the poster, we sold the premise. Now we need to put the pieces together and get a writer to like, well, here's the limitations, or here's the the creative parameters. We need to flesh it out so we can get into production. I'm so, again, not everything's that easy, and not everything is every deal is different, which makes your job super interesting, because you said each deal is a creative opportunity to see how you can put the pieces together, and it doesn't make it boring whatsoever, if I'm correct. So
yeah, that's completely correct. And I do want to kind of, you brought up an interesting point there, kind of hidden within everything you were saying, and that is that if any of the writers listening want to pursue passion projects, they absolutely should, and they should continually work on those. What I'm explaining is exactly what you said, which is when an opportunity pops up where you're going to get paid to write, which is the real goal in screenwriting, you're going to say yes to it, and you should, regardless of how, daunting the challenge might be, or how unappealing at first the script might be. The script will always become challenging because they're all tough to write. But my sort of view on this is, if you kind of, just as we reverse engineer putting a movie together and financing it and everything else, reverse engineer your thinking about how you're approaching your career. It's not, the process is not you go to film school and you get a great education on film, or maybe you never went to film school and you're just always had an interest, and then you go, work really hard on a script and you pour your heart and soul into it, and then you go sell it. It doesn't work that way. It's more, you go out, you write the seemingly formulaic or expected stuff, you write the stuff that Hollywood needs and what we depend on, and then you get continual commissions to continue writing new scripts for new people that follow these formulaic seeming genres. And then people start to get to know you. They start to understand that you are a writer who can deliver. You're a writer who can write fast, you can write dependable, you can turn in a script on time, you can turn in a script that meets the needs of the production, that meets the needs and the budget levels the line producer's working with, that hits all the points that the director's after, but is also meeting all the things that the distributors are saying, we need XYZ elements in there so we can satisfy our major investor in Russia. And if you can deliver that, you will become that writer that I'm talking about, which is, your stuff is not being filed neatly in a back storage room. You're the phone call that people make when they need somebody on the spot. And once you develop that reputation, and once you develop that go-to kind of behavior, later in life, once you've amassed the contacts, you've developed the reputation of dependability and developed the reputation of someone who can write content that works, then you can go, I have these other projects, and you'll have a whole network of people to talk to you, who will listen to you, and will help you get from point A to point B with the stuff you're really passionate about. That's how Kaufman did it. That's how a lot of these really huge writers do it. And if you believe that, these huge mega writers, the ones that are like household names, are, sitting at a conference room table, pounding the fist on the table, saying, it's my way or the highway or anything like that, it's emphatically not true. They understand that, if a company's going to be putting money into it, they have to deliver a script that meets it. A great example right now, I can't say the name, but we're working with a huge writer, and he's a guy who has written scripts that, anyone listening to this would be envious to even just be in a room with him. And our company's talking about putting in some money into the project, and the budget level is more than what we're willing to do, so I'm trying to broker deals to find that deficit of the money. And, we're all kind of working together. And I'm not, the conversations I'm having with he and his agent and his reps and all, they're not, well, he wants it this way. They're more, what can we do? How can we change it so we can match the budget you have? It's a compromise. They're working with us. And that's how it all works. And he's a big shot. And he did it because he made steps through his whole career, writing what was needed, serving the needs of Hollywood, built the reputation, and now whenever he makes a phone call, anyone would gladly take it. And we did.
Let me ask you, does a writer, a screenwriter, do they need to be in Los Angeles to sort of build that career, you believe? Or
No.
Has anybody been able to, that you've seen, been able to do it remotely?
You can do it remotely. You don't need to be in LA. I think it's very important to have LA experience. I talk about that in the book. Like, if you are able to, good example. You mentioned AFM. I think most of the people listening to this podcast know the American Film Market, perhaps a few have been before. But I think that there is a way to attend AFM that is very different than the logic of going and buying a ticket or getting a badge and walking around and trying to hawk your script or make introduction. You can volunteer for AFM. You can volunteer and be paid to arrive. You will have firsthand access to all the booths, to all the distributors. You can even be an intern for one of the distributors and listen in on all those conversations. And, if you're doing that, you're here in LA, if only for 2 weeks. You are getting a real sense of how the business truly works at a business level. And you are overhearing the real conversations in real time as they happen, and you're getting a valuable network of people. Now, you can't take advantage of it in the sense of exploit it and, force your work on the people that you're working with at that exact moment, but you're building your network. I think it's very important to have LA experience, to know how the city works, to know how, to kind of get the nuances of the landscape. But look, I've worked with writers who are all over the country, who don't even live in the United States. Our company and many companies, we do lots of co-productions in Canada. We do lots of co-productions with entities overseas. So having a writer in Toronto or having a writer in Vancouver or St. Louis or wherever, it happens. I'd say actually we're doing 2 or 3 movies right now this year alone with a team in South Carolina. I'm sorry. 1 film in South Carolina, 1 film in Florida, and I think there's a 3rd movie coming in the Southeast there. But I mean, these aren't even states that you normally think of as like, not the typical film credit states like New Mexico or Louisiana. I mean, these are deep South states that, you wouldn't think of it as having much of a crew or anything like that. And the lighters are coming from there. Some of the money's coming out of there, and, they're being filmed there.
Yeah, I know some actors that live out there in Atlanta just because they call it like Hollywood South in terms of having access to, Atlanta, Georgia, plus South Carolina, North Carolina, and Florida, just to have that stretch. And also, a lot of people know people up in Vancouver, sort of like Hollywood North, So it's all these, it's very interesting that way. Hey, this is like...
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, I was going to say we have a guy in Vancouver right now. We just sent him up there to manage a production. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a crazy trip of Toronto, then New York, then Denver, all in the span of like 4 or 5 days. I mean, most people don't think Denver, but I mean, there's real opportunity there. There's major companies there and channels. So yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's like Colorado is like the next Silicon Valley. There's so many tech companies kind of popping up there right now. It's quite interesting, the whole Colorado landscape between Boulder and Denver. So that totally makes sense. I had this one question. This is sort of me personally. Schuler M. Moore, the entertainment lawyer, and he wrote this book called The Biz, but he also wrote this article not too long ago for, I forget what particular blog it was for, but he was talking about the danger of the pre-sales collapsing once sort of like Netflix goes global, because the role of the foreign pre-sales, which funds a lot of what the independent film world depends on in terms of raising the budget. I was curious what your thoughts are, or what the climate is amongst other distribution companies of this aspect of the business model if the foreign pre-sales don't hold relevance anymore, or will it always hold relevance? You know, that's sort of a bigger question, and I didn't mean to throw that on you, but I was curious because this is the first opportunity I had to talk to somebody from on the other side, as opposed to being someone on the outside speculating.
Yeah. So in answer to that, foreign pre-sales is a pretty straightforward concept because we've heard about it so much. But remember, at the end of the day, all that's going on is a company that's a third party to you is interest. You're looking for somebody basically to work with. You are saying, I will invest X in a project if you will pay Y in dollars, and we'll come up with a deal. In truth, it really doesn't matter who that third party final company is. The business really just works on brokering deals, financing projects, producing the movies, and then getting it out into the ethos of the global consuming world. So for a second, since you brought up Netflix going global, and it's not just Netflix. I mean, there's Amazon with its Prime as SVOD service. There's Google. There's a lot of these companies that are really spreading out. But at the end of the day, when Amazon is doing its original series, and I remember bringing up the idea a long time ago that Amazon would be doing original series and Netflix would be doing original series. And a couple of years ago, I was a crazy person for even suggesting this, and now it's the reality. And they're coming up with some of the best award-winning content that there is. So, instead of me going and brokering a deal with a TV channel here in the U.S. or overseas, in the next 5 years, and I'm already kind of starting that process now, I will be trying to broker deals directly with Netflix or broker deals directly with Hulu or with Google or whomever. That's kind of the next phase. Nothing's changing. And when I say in the book, like all I'm talking about is the principles of Hollywood. Don't follow trends, follow principles. That principle is exactly the same. We're just doing deals, and I'm going out. I'm bringing a couple of ideas that we think as a company are very strong. We're delivering them to clients that we think we could do business with, and we're both agreeing to fund 50-50 or however we want to do the deal with them as the end user. Look at Vimeo today. We all think of Vimeo as this entity that is, 3 years ago it was a password-protected way to show a screener of your movie. They're a big player now. I went to their offices, back in September in New York. They're huge, and it's one of these environments which is all like cool and trendy with beanbags and stuff. But they're out trying to make some real plays. They have some real great original content out right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been on the phone with an agent trying to buy a movie. I shouldn't say buy a movie. I'm trying to acquire the rights so that I can sell the movie to all the platforms that I sell to. I'm competing with some of these digital platforms. Like, they're willing to throw down some real money just so it plays on that one platform, whereas I'm trying to pick it up so I can put it on all the platforms. And it's just an interesting thing. But pre-sales, are they going to go away? As we know them, of course. But is the concept exactly the same? Is my line of work, taking a talented writer, taking a strong idea, presenting it to people who have the ability to invest money into making it a reality, and then brokering all that together? Will that still continue? Yes. It's just maybe the names on the Rolodex who I'm calling might be different, and the company names might be different. But it's the same concept.
Oh, interesting. It's kind of like for the world of like the uber independent filmmaker, the people that don't have sort of any connections, or they don't feel like they have any connections or any value in terms of they don't have any name actors. Maybe their genre is a little offbeat, but they're building the project through like the crowdfunding platform. You can almost, if done correctly, a uber independent filmmaker could use the crowdfunding platform to get all their money up front, use it as the pre-sale. Like, okay, we have X amount of people that bought into it. We raised $100,000. What we really should do is maybe make the film for like $25,000 and use $75,000 maybe to cover, our fees, our budget, our fees, or profit, and then use a lot of it for marketing, for direct distribution through EST, because most, if I'm correct, most independent films can't get onto cable VOD without normally having a formal distribution agreement in place, because the cable companies, they don't want to deal with every little independent producer. They like to just deal with like the studios or a reputable distribution company. So they need to even be vetted. And the numbers that are coming in on the blog sphere about like, oh, this film performed this well on VOD, or this is how much they made on VOD. And the uber independent filmmaker sees VOD as sort of like the iTunes numbers or the electronic sell-through, the digital downloads. And the reality is, if I'm correct, they're separate. So it's like a true indie, like uber indie, who raised money through a crowdfunding campaign, who's selling it directly through Vimeo on demand or VHX or Distrify, or putting on iTunes or Amazon Prime. The digital download or the EST side of things, they have to work on transactions and not necessarily the deals that a cable company would push through all the different factors that they have. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, the evolution of the crowdfunding, if those producers get savvier in terms of, like, they could use the same principles like you were talking about in Hollywood, which is, do you have a form of distribution, and do you have enough demand for your product that is matched up with a price point that then you can decide, like, what budget do you make your product for in order to recoup a profit and cover your costs, as opposed to a lot of things. It's like, if a filmmaker raises $100,000, they're going to make a $100,000 movie, and they don't leave themselves any leeway for all the other stuff about the business. And then their whole strategy is like hope and pray, like they made something great that somebody will buy it. And sometimes that's where a lot of people are left hanging, which is like they're disappointed that the numbers don't always add up. But that was sort of just me pontificating. But I was curious what your thoughts are for that world of the uber independent filmmaker working in that playground of the crowdfunding and so on, and maybe possibly bring, at what point do they bring it to a distribution company so that there is like a win-win situation, or like the best case scenario? I probably said a lot.
Well, no, it's fine. I was actually kind of drawing a lot of parallels between several of topics here. First off, as a writer, you're sitting in a room by yourself. You're writing scripts. If you just have the scripts and send those out, they're not going to get seen. You have to hustle them. You have to call people. You have to get people excited about it. You have to, you have to basically get people to get excited so you can showcase your work to them. And that's kind of where you get that pitch meeting. And then that's where you get to present other ideas. And then you kind of get to be this like go-to person, and they will start to work with you and will slowly start to give you some work and commission work from you. So you start basically with scripts that are going to market you the best, and then you have to talk about them in a way that are going to market your abilities the best so you can secure the deal. Now, apply that exact same principle to everything you just said.
Mm-hmm.
The uber indie filmmaker who's making a movie for $5,000 or $20,000, and I've made a few of those, and I've been on lots of sets, and they're hellish experiences, but you learn more from those than anything else. And the hardest part is, as you're saying, is just completing them. And if you don't complete it, you have nothing to talk about. But just as where most screenwriting books fail new screenwriters by not really telling them what to do with the project after it's done, or how to talk about it or anything else, and get their name and their work out there, aka market themselves, most newbie filmmakers fall into the same pattern and problem, which is they raise the money however they raise it, and then they apply all the money to finishing the movie, and then they have this movie and they don't know what the hell to do with it. And they go, okay, well, I'll put it on iTunes and see what happens, and then nothing happens. And maybe they do like a little bit of a marketing stunt, and they get that tiny blip, and that's kind of the life of the movie. And then, or they might go after a couple of distribution companies and they get these giant agreements and they don't understand what the hell these mean, or why they get royalty statements 6 months later that say that their movie's now negative $25,000 or whatever. Apply that same marketing concept of think about your end result first. Just as you're writing a script, you have to know where you're going to end it. So think about your career path in the same way. If you're going to go make a movie like that, what are you going to do with it after it's done? Are you going to build in all the marketing elements you need? And exactly as you're saying, when you're budgeting the movie, are you just budgeting the movie, or are you budgeting for the lifespan of the movie so that you have marketing money in there, so that you have finishing money in there, so that when the movie is done, you can set up a website, you can promote it, you can build an audience, you can drive traffic to it. That way, if you decide to, a self-distribution route, place it on iTunes or any of the other platforms, which you can do solo, you will now have an audience to drive traffic to it. Whereas if you go with a distribution company, you are able to give them all these tools, behind-the-scenes stuff, marketing components, still, all this other stuff that now the distribution company can use to do that same process, which is drive traffic to your movie. You're going to see some real results out of it. So I don't even know if I answered your question here, but I mean, like, how does it move?
No, it's funny because I don't know if I even had a question. I was just, like I said, I was just pontificating. Yeah. But it's true. You brought up the same principles. If you're starting at the script stage, and you have to do a set of marketing, but you have to know what your end result is, and you have to do the hustle. And the same thing if you do the uber independent film route. If you go a crowdfunding route, you have to know the end result. The end result is essentially getting out to audience and hopefully making your money back. And you really want to make a profit. And a distribution company has the same thing. Like your world is, I've got a set of clients. I've got, all over the world, different buyers. We try to construct a deal to make sure that we are edging our bets the best we can based off these, predetermined sort of contracts are put in place, which makes it much easier for a bank to go, great, I'm going to give you money versus this uber independent filmmaker who just has an idea and doesn't have an end result of how they were going to get paid back. Versus the distribution company says, great, you already have these contracts, basically these promise notes in place that says that if you finish the film within this budget on time, and then these contracts will pay you X amount of dollars, we know that we'll get our money back, and then everyone who's involved with the production side will get their fee, based off the director will get their particular fee, the actors, and so on. So everybody gets that covered. That allows, if I'm correct, allows the distribution company and whatever deal was made with the producers to, if the film is successful beyond just selling to the foreign markets, anything that comes in, sort of the ideally the back end, the life of the film or whatever the contract was, like the 10-year, 25-year license of the film property, exploiting that IP allows for wealth over time. And so, yeah, it's the same is done in your world as it is the writer's world, as it is the uber independent filmmaker's world. And I think that's the big thing for the uber independent filmmaker to see, is that if you don't work in a relationship with a distribution company, you have to do it on your own, you're going to have to cover all those bases yourself. And I was curious about sort of the marketing aspect of how does like Mar Vista handle like marketing aspects for different films? Is the marketing department big, or is it just varies on each film that comes out?
In truth, our marketing department is in a huge process of growing right now, as most companies are. And the reason is, as the division I'm running is Mar Vista Digital Entertainment. It's MVD, what we call it. And I've, with my team, and we brokered deals direct with Google, with Amazon, with In Demand, which owns Time Warner, Comcast, and a couple others, or gets content to them, I should say. And I had lunch with the guys at iTunes and DirecTV and everything else. So what it is we're doing is, we're going out and we're acquiring movies and we're marketing them to these clients, and then once we kind of, place them on platforms, we are then marketing the movie itself and driving traffic to it. So it's one thing of working with our clients getting those movies in the best possible placement they can be, and then working with each movie as a unique entity, finding its niche audience, and driving traffic to it. So it has more eyeballs on it because of better placement on each platform.
Mm-hmm.
Each platform has a better, target demographic than the other. And then, we're driving ad dollars, marketing spend, and eyeballs to each of those, and those turn into transaction, which turns into money in the filmmaker's pocket. So, that's kind of the process we're following there. And you mentioned Kickstarter. You mentioned any of these grassroots way of getting money. It's no different than what I do on a daily basis. I'm going out. It's true. I'm going out. I'm saying, this is my movie. This is the project we want to bring to you. And more or less, I'm doing it on a bigger scale, which is I'm looking for major cash payments from clients. Or I'm trying to broker output deals so they're guaranteed to buy a certain number of movies from me each year, wherever they are in the world. But the point is that whether the movie's done or not done, and I'm trying to pre-sell it, the point is I go out and I give it all the razzle-dazzle and presentation that I can. I try to do my best to present it as what the movie will be. So you're not investing in my script. You're investing in what will be eventually. And you can have a stake in that. And whether it's a company in Moscow buying in early, whether it's a company in Beirut buying in early, or whether it's a dude in Omaha, Nebraska saying, you know what, I kind of like that movie. I'll give you $5, and you build from there. The bottom line, as a filmmaker and as a writer, and anyone who's looking for a job or anything else, you go out and you market yourself. You market what it is you can bring to the table, and that's how you get people to notice your work and notice you as the person who can do that work. And if you're using your script is no different than a resume. You're bringing it to the table. You're saying, this is what I can deliver. What ideas do you have? And I'll give them to you. I'll turn your ideas into a treatment. I'll turn your ideas into a screenplay. And I'll make your job easier because now you don't have to go search through as many scripts, and you can depend on me to do it right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a job interview. That's what a pitch meeting is. That's how it works. You're going in to solve Hollywood's problems by delivering scripts that fill a need that they have. It may not be as sexy as a passion project, a coming of age story, something that's really moving to you, and but it's needed. It's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mom in Iowa who has 3 screaming kids who just wants to put something on to keep them calm for a bit. There's a tween girl in Chicago who's clicking through movies looking for something that speaks to her directly, and she's not somebody who has any interest in a hard-hitting drama. There's a young boy who's, curious about what it would be like to be called upon by the CIA to be a spy, and he finds that movie on Google and wants to buy it. This is the real marketplace. This is where the real dollars come in, and this is what Hollywood banks on. And if you can tap into that early, if you can hit that point wherever you are in your career, if you can hit it now, you'll start to see doors opening, emails getting responded to, and phone calls getting returned. There's a lot of talented writers in Hollywood. As I said, there's tons of talented writers, and there's no shortage of scripts. Problem is the majority of them just aren't hitting the right genres the right way, and the book lays out what you need to do, what scripts you need to write, how you need to talk about them, ways you can learn to take confidence so you can talk about them better, because, not everyone's born as a great speaker. A lot of writers are naturally shy. It's okay, and there's ways you can take the confidence so you can hit all this and hit this game plan and really get your career moving, not just see one script maybe have a blip.
And that concludes my interview, or the rebroadcast of my interview with Scott Kirkpatrick. And again, think about picking up his book, Writing for the Greenlight, over at Amazon. And all the show notes, all the links to everything we talked about are available at filmtrooper.com/126 for episode number 126. If you like this interview, please think about leaving a ratings and review over in iTunes for me. Just go to filmtrooper.com/iTunes. That will take you to the iTunes page. And any ratings and review would be very, very helpful in spreading the word about this particular podcast. And of course, don't go away empty-handed because I have a free gift for you over at freegearguide.com. It's an equipment list of everything I use to make a feature film for $500 without a crew. Again, that's at freegearguide.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.
Film Trooper, filmmaking freedom for the independent.